Well, hey, welcome, welcome. Today is the seventh day of December. Well, it's actually December 6th. And I'm welcoming all of you to our Advancing Nurse Coaching webinar today. Our holiday times are upon us, and it's a time of reflection and renewal. It's a time for gathering with friends and family. And as beautiful as all of that is, oftentimes it presents issues for some people who have challenges in relationships. And that really is our topic today about emotional well-being. And I think that Teresa has just prepared a beautiful PowerPoint for us as a starting point. We'll look forward to having some questions and answers at the end of our call. And Teresa has placed the um, contact information for Calendly into the chat. So you can get in touch with us that way as well. We are celebrating our 7th year of Advancing Nurse Coaching. When we opened our program 7 years ago, we actually opened on 3 continents because we have a big vision for nursing. And Teresa can tell us about the turning point. I just am so grateful, so glad to be here now with each of you, to be able to call you my colleagues, and to thank you for choosing nursing as your profession. Teresa?
Hey, thanks, Lynn. Welcome, everyone. I think this is one of my favorite topics ever because I didn't really understand the implications of the role that stress plays in our life. I mean, obviously, I knew I was stressed. I knew, I had thoughts about the relationships that I had. And I used to seek relief in like different modalities, talk therapy, venting to friends, because I knew internally there was this stress feeling that I would always have, and it felt like I needed to do something about it for that feeling to go away. And I think it's interesting as a nurse, we're under stress all the time. We just kind of live there, we kind of thrive there sometimes. In my early career, working ICU and the ER, kind of enjoyed that adrenaline rush, the newness of it. But as time has gone on, it's like, hold on, I don't think I need it that much. And so a lot of the stress I was feeling, I equated it to work, like it was work causing me stress or the children causing me stress. And I was always so busy that I never took the time to stop and go, when am I going to take care of this? When is this going to go away? Well, the answer is never, because there's always going to be something new. And I realized early on that we really didn't know how to handle people's stress. And it was in 2015 at a conference, and most of you have heard this story, where I heard something about how my thoughts really were the cause of my internal stress. It wasn't the circumstance. And it wasn't that I didn't know that that was part of it, but I didn't know how true it was. So that's the presentation today, is talking about stress and emotional well-being, but from a perspective of this internal dialogue. Like, how do we settle our own stress down? How do we begin to decrease the attachment that we have to our stress? Because there is good stress as well. If we have a goal we want to reach or a deadline we have to complete, it also empowers us to do that. But it really is the chronic stress that's causing us so much problems in our society today. So with that said, I'm gonna share my screen here and go through this little PowerPoint that I created for us, just to sort of have a place to talk about it and begin to kind of take a deeper look at what stress does for us and how we can decrease that stress and improve our health and well-being at the same time. So this presentation is Stress Reduction and Emotional Well-Being, the Resilience Principles Paradigm, also called the 3 Principles. So think about just for a second, what is stress to you? What does stress feel like in your body? Do you get frequent headaches? Do you have muscle aches, fatigue, skin irritation, shortness of breath, that underlying shortness of breath, like you can't take a deep breath sometimes? Or does it come out for you as worry, foggy thinking, sometimes making decisions you wouldn't normally make? Maybe you have restless sleep or nightmares, tiredness. A constant state of negativity can be a sign of stress. Another one that we often miss is being accident prone. I can't tell you how many times I would walk from my bed to my bathroom and I'd stub my toe, hit the corner of the dresser, just not being aware of surroundings as much, because I was very internally focused. And I think a lot of people are. Insomnia. Are you able to actually sleep all night? I know that for a long, long time, I would wake up 2 or 3 times a night. We don't take our sleep time as seriously as we should. And then the other one is emotional. Are you irritable? Does everything irritate you? When you're driving, especially, and no one's in the car with you, what are you doing? I know a lot of people have road rage. Or do you just shut down and just pretend like nothing matters? Those are all signs of stress that a lot of times we don't pay that much attention to. The stress response, or the fight or flight response, is really intended for very short, life-threatening moments. Like if you're going to get eaten by a lion, you might want to have a little stress response to give you that extra boost of adrenaline, give you a little extra sugar in your system, a little extra oomph so you can run. But it was only meant to be activated 30 minutes at most to get away from the danger. But in our society today, we're activating this system, this hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, which I think we're all very familiar with as nurses, that need to do something, that fight or flight feeling that we have is actually a chemical reaction in our body that's designed to save our life. You know, the things that it does to our body is it stops digestion, increases muscle tension, increases blood vessel tension, increases our heart rate, dumps all the glucose from our liver into our system. I know you're getting the idea. These are all of the disease processes that we have today: heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety disorders. All of that is that underlying chemical reaction in our body that has a direct connection to the way we use our thinking to interact in our daily life. We are so integrated in our system of the way we work in our life, we miss the cues. So the effects are how it lights up in our brain, how these reactions come to us through our thought. They go directly into the neural pathways that help us to even know that we're having stress. This is actually a diagram of chronic pain, but it's really how the brain works. You know, with a brain without stress, just is kind of at its baseline doing its thing. Everything is right in the world. When we have an acute stress event, all the things light up. We have a focused thinking. We actually get tunnel vision. And we're here to take care of the problem. But with chronic pain, which is where a lot of people are living, chronic stress, these areas are lit up all the time. They never settle down. They don't give us relief from the stressful events in our lives. And we lose our bearings. We start multitasking. How many of us have been through this? We're doing the kids, the cooking, the grocery list. taking care of all the problems of life, and we become oblivious to the cues that our bodies are actually giving us, and because we're not paying any attention to how we're using our thought. So I like to call the activation of this system and the feelings that we have in our body as love letters to ourselves. And when we pay attention to those, we actually can have a little bit more clarity. Like we can pause for a moment and say, what's really going on here? So chronic mental stress, chronic activation of the stress response actually creates a dysfunction in our neural circuits. Every single part of a human being is integrated, mind, body, and spirit. And it's that part of us that we have to have that to live in this world. It gives us information about our world. And if we think everything that's happening in our world is coming to us as problems or other people or jobs, that dysregulation happens very, very quickly. So I want to talk a little bit about how this cycle works. We have a thought. We call it the principle of thought. This principle is actually neutral. It doesn't have anything to do with our personal thinking. It's this spiritual principle of thought that's a gift to us that we're born with, that we get to use however we want. And through our thought, based on our thinking, whether it's about our families, our jobs, past events, all the things that make up a human being's experience of life, can activate this stress response. And if we're healthy, that stress response will resolve within 30 minutes to an hour. But if it doesn't, we live in that chronic state of stress, sometimes 16, 18, 20 hours a day. And knowing that we're dumping all of those chemical hormones in our system, keeping it activated all the time, we're hurting ourselves. We're becoming our patients, the people we take care of, that we try to help, and we're missing our own cues. So we're going to talk a little bit about stress prevention. And it's this cycle that we have this knowledge that when we recognize how our thought works, we can actually decrease our stress without going somewhere, without sitting on a pillow. We can recognize what we're doing with our thinking and settle ourselves down internally in the moment. So this formula, we call it mind plus consciousness plus thought equals reality. These three principles, mind, consciousness, and thought, create a paradigm, create a one way that we experience life. And I want to unpackage that for us just a little bit. But at first I want to talk about, what the resilience principles or three principles are not. Because most people think to get out of this stress cycle, they have to do something wonderful or something, tap into something that they don't have. So it's really not about maximizing your strengths. It doesn't matter. Everyone has the ability to recognize their own thinking. And it's not overcoming circumstances, because I think we always look like, well, I'm in this situation, how can I get out of it? That's actually not resilience either. If you don't have to do anything but recognize, oh, hold on, the way I'm interacting with my world doesn't come from my circumstances. And some people say it's, well, their personality. Everyone has resilience, so it can't be based on personality. And it can't be the past, because everyone has a past. Lots of people have trauma or bad things that happen to us. And it doesn't have to be big, horrible traumas either. They can be just little things that affect us in our life that we put a lot of emphasis on. So it's not about that. And it's not about individual differences or positive thinking. which a lot of people think they can change their thoughts to positive. Well, I'm just not going to think that. I'll think positive. While our resilience comes from the positive side of life, it's actually built in based on our recognition of our thought patterns. So we have a new definition for what resilience really is. And it says resilience is not being bound by circumstances or the past. Those things do not predict or indicate the resilience of a human being. We are naturally resilient. We are resilient with every step we take. It's our birthright. We are able to be resilient. You can tell you're resilient if you're sitting here today. You have been resilient the whole time. So what are these principles, these resilience principles? I alluded to them a minute ago as mind, consciousness, and thought, but they truly are the elements of life. This is a metaphor. This isn't saying I can explain what mind is, or I can explain consciousness. I can explain thought. But what we're saying is, as a metaphor, those three things, mind, consciousness, and thought, spiritual, innate, universal principles, are here to help us live life. They give us an experience of life. And so if you can for just a minute, kind of just listen beyond the words to what they're actually pointing to, or the implications. That, listen, we're not saying that other people aren't talking about this, because they are. We're just trying to create a common language so that we can maybe get a little insight into how we work psychologically, interacting in our world to decrease our own stress and lean into this feeling of well-being, that everything is right in the world, no matter what's going on around us. So the principle of mind, just as some definitions and hopefully some context, is mind is not brain. You can't hold it in your hand. It's a power. It's the power of mental life. It's the catalyst of our reality. If we didn't have access to mind, the spiritual nature of mind, where all knowledge resides, we wouldn't have an experience of life. It's the intelligence behind life. You can put any words you want on it, but it's what's running the universe. And it gives us a way to navigate. I often like to think, one day it came to me, I was like, oh, so the knowledge of how to fly an airplane was always in the world, but no one did it till the Wright brothers. Why was that? Maybe we weren't ready. Maybe the time in evolution of history where we had the ability to create the materials to do that. But for whatever reason, it only appeared, back in the late 1800s or early 1900s. It is no different today. There are things coming into this world that have not been here yet. And it comes to us through mind. Consciousness, I want to say just for a second, these principles, mind, consciousness, and thought, must always exist together. If they don't, if one is missing, we won't have a psychological experience. We won't be able to understand life itself. So consciousness is this incredible nature and the tangible capacity of making us aware of life. It's our ability to even be aware that we think, and aware of our reality through our five senses, through our love letters to our bodies, through our bodies, and the environment around us. We are completely immersed in these principles at all times, even if we can't see it. But truly, this principle of thought is the one that gives us this personalized experience. Thought itself, as a principle, is neutral. It's just this constant flow of ideas. I sometimes think of it as a ticker tape on the bottom of a TV. Like, sometimes I miss a word. Sometimes I can read all the words. Sometimes I don't want to pay attention to it at all, but it's always there. But without thought, we couldn't recognize mental life. We couldn't even recognize that we're conscious or that have access to new knowledge. So it is truly through thought that we experience life. And it's our ability to engage in all the aspects of life. So the resilience principles, or 3 principles, because they are profoundly connected to each other and cannot be separated, and if one is missing, we don't have a paradigm, and therefore no experience of life. They actually point to one moment in time where we can really truly experience life. And it's right here in this present moment, as we're having this conversation about something that is super important to understand in our life, because it gives us a locus of control, a rudder, if you will, for life. So thought really is your superpower. I love this picture because your thoughts, your feelings, the state of mind you're in, the way you're showing up, creates this experience of life. And it can be anything you want it to be. And the beauty of it is no two people ever experience anything exactly the same way. That's how personal it is. You can go to a movie and see the exact same movie. One person will love it, one person won't. And it's perfectly fine. That's the way the system is set up. But when we're present and calm and peaceful, what do we see? We see beauty. We see nature. We look around and say, isn't it wonderful? We feel so connected to everything in our world that life looks good. That can be in one moment. In the next moment, we could go, I don't know what's happening. Nobody loves me. Why am I here? I don't know what to do. And we appear to lose our way. When we lose our way, we suffer. We have things like depression, anxiety, lack of purpose. You know, all the things that we think gives us a good life when we have those things, but it's still our thought. It comes to us through thought, even if it doesn't feel like it. Both events are exactly the same. They just have a different meaning in this moment, in the moment that you're experiencing it. So where do we think our feelings are coming from? Do we think it's coming from our work or our relationship, our family, society? I know a lot of people look out into the world and go, isn't it awful? My grandmother, when I was born a long time ago, she's like, why are you bringing these little children into this horrible world? And I thought, and when I heard my mother tell me that, I was like, well, this is a pretty good world. I don't know what she's talking about. You know, how can that be a bad world? And I hear people say it even today. A good or a bad world is based on your level of thinking, your engagement in life, the way you show up in life. And it becomes this ability to make the distinction between where do you think your feelings are coming from? And it can be fluid in any conversation. For example, my sister and I were having a conversation on the phone, and the conversation started out very anxious. She was crying, making some decisions, not knowing what to do. And she was like, I just don't know what to do with myself. And so we talked a little longer, and the subject changed. And not even 5 minutes later, we're laughing about something in our family that was funny. And then we kind of went back and forth, and I was watching the conversation go, and I said, stop, hold it, because we talk about this stuff. And I said, do you see what happened in this conversation, this one conversation? We've been from crying to laughing to a little bit anxious to feeling okay. She's like, wow, I've never seen my thinking like that before. I was just experiencing my thinking as I was speaking. And that was what was happening in my world. I think it's very interesting to look at ourselves in a little bit of an outside in looking view as if observing yourself to see maybe patterns of thinking or how we're showing up, and watch ourselves think. It gives us some information that we can't get otherwise. So this inner dialogue, I call it your truth meter. If we know that there are principles, we call them mind, consciousness, and thought, that are supporting us all the time, every day, all day long, even when we're sleeping, as neutral principles that are a gift to us from the universe, from God, to use to experience life with. And it comes to us through thought. But the system only works one way. Mind, consciousness, and thought, think of it like a projector that's plugged into the source of all knowledge, all consciousness, all thought, neutral principles. But we have this gift of personal thinking, personal thought. And that's what comes out our eyes, that creates our reality, how we see the world based on our current thinking. And this slide is kind of like this internal truth meter, internal dialogue. And I know it's really busy, but it's really a conversation, like as an experience of looking at your thinking in a way that gives you the ability to see what's true and what's not true in your world. And you could pick a topic if you want to kind of pick any topic in your life right now, something that's bothering you or not, or something that's really good happening for you, and just sort of listen to how this internal dialogue works and see if something comes up for you that you see that you hadn't seen before. So this top is basically this previous slide, the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, always supporting you, always helping you. Your own personal thought bridge, the power of thought, the principle of thought coming to form in this world through our own eyes and our own experience. So if you've picked a topic, I'm going to pick the topic of headache. I did this one the other day, and it was very interesting. So we'll see how it works out. The truth is that when we're aligned with the principles and we say we have a headache, there could be some reasons for it. You know, we think of it as, oh, it's the pressure outside. I have a tension headache. My eyes are fatigued. Those are some of the reasons that we apply this reasons for why things are happening to us. But beyond that, how would you know you had a headache? How would you know that you had a headache at all? Well, the truth is we have this internal locus of control of, oh, I'm getting some physical feedback and it's manifesting as a headache. And, oh, so if I'm having a headache, how do I know that I'm having it? What does that mean for me? And the person that we were talking with, she was like, I don't want to be attached to this headache interfering in my life. And I said, but how would you know that the headache was interfering with your life? And so it became this conversation of, it's not the headache causing me a problem. It's my thought about the headache. And she's like, oh, well, I could have a headache and not have anything on it. I could experience a headache knowing that it's my thoughts about it, whether how limiting it is, how painful it is, how debilitating, or maybe it's just a minor aggravation for you. It's not the context of the headache that we're talking about. We're talking about how did the awareness and the meaning of what that headache means to you, where did that come from? So you ask yourself, where do I think my experience of my headache is coming from? The answer is it's coming to you through thought. Through that thought bridge, you get to create the meaning of whatever that headache means to you but it's not the symptom or the meanings that we give it. While they may prompt us to do something about the headache, obviously we have to take care of this physical feeling, but we wouldn't have an experience of the headache without these principles. So we're pointing to the operating system of how we work psychologically that gives us an awareness of something, in this case, a headache manifesting in our bodies, that prompt us to take an action to take care of ourselves. When we learn to listen from that direction and help us to discern, oh, how much emphasis do I have to put on this or not? And if it doesn't go away, can I still be okay? And that was the question. Can I be okay even if I have a headache? Well, yeah, the answer is yes, because that's one of those places where we may take a nap. Maybe we just need some rest. Maybe we have to take something for it. Or maybe if I take my attention off of it and put it onto something else, maybe I won't notice it as much. Because we're made to heal at all times. Headaches go away. How do they go away? We have innate health. We have healing that happens in our bodies in spite of anything we do. It's the way our system works. And so knowing where your experience is coming from, even in a simple headache, is pointing to the implication to your thoughts, your feeling, creating your experience of life. And it happens in this present moment. And it gives us an ability to really begin to navigate and have that internal dialogue to question the truth about things that we think. And it could be even things we think about our relationships. How do we experience another person? We experience another person by what we think about them. That's it. That one-way system. I experience another person by the way I think about them. I like an example one of my friends did. He's like, when you point at someone else and tell them something about themselves that you think they need to know, you need to look at those three fingers pointing back at you. That's your true belief. Like if you see it in someone else, you might want to take a look inside yourself and see, oh, might be something else there for us to take a listen to. And it can be any topic that you want to explore. We can go through this care plan. I call this a care plan. It's a self-care plan of your internal dialogue, and you can put any topic you want to it and have a conversation, especially with a nurse coach, to really kind of help you see this underlying operating system that's always there to support you, always there to help you. And it helps you right in the moment. You don't have to go anywhere to use it. It's always there. So there's really no other place to be. If we can't be somewhere else except for this present moment, because the principles don't exist in the past. The only way the past comes into play with us is because we bring it to our thought in the present moment. It's not in the future. We can go in a direction, but we can't know what it's going to be like until we get there. Doesn't mean we don't make plans, doesn't mean we don't anticipate things that I might need to do, plane tickets you might need to buy, but you won't know what's there for you until you get there. So when we slow it down and say, you know, if the only thing I can do in this moment is to figure out how my thinking works and decide what kind of life do you want? How do you want to experience life? If you're not getting in your life the things that you want to experience, how can I tap into this inner resource, this ability to be supported by unchanging principles at all times that gives us something, a foundation that we can count on, that relieves this stress, this stressfulness of life, because we realize it's truly our thought created world, and we can change our mind at any moment that we want. So the big takeaway is, if you caught a glimpse, or maybe you've already been thinking this way your whole life, a lot of people say, I do this all the time. It's true, we do. But there's so many people who don't. So knowing how principles actually work, this spiritual nature that we are, living a human life, we get to slow down and enjoy life. We can be aware of the love and compassion and gratitude that we have as human beings. It truly is a superpower. And it's the innate resilience that we all have. It allows us to live life embracing the moments in life. It's not out there. It's not next week. It's here right now. So thank you for being here. This is Lynn and Teresa, and we just would like to open it up for questions and comments.
Oke, sudah film. Sorry, por Você tem que pôr.
And we're back. So did anything stand out to anyone? Something that they hadn't heard before, or heard before and heard in a new way? Me, it's one of my favorite subjects in the world because I spend so much time trying to figure things out. And I don't know, there's so much to unpack. It feels like trying to navigate life and figure out how to do all these things. And yet, in the simplicity of recognizing thought in the moment, this ability to navigate life from this internal dialogue that really helps us to see life in a little bit different way, gives us I don't know, just a feeling of peace and calm that doesn't always exist for me. Not before the principles. It seems like now when I go outside in, we call it outside in or not true state of mind, I know immediately, because it seems like the whole world's closing in. There's nothing to do. I lose my way. It looks really big, like there's these big problems to solve and I don't know how to do it. And then I realize what I've been doing is playing a game with myself. Like, oh, I started making up a lot of stories about things. One of the times I saw that the most was during the pandemic, and it was right at the beginning, and the hospital shut down. And my daughter worked at the front desk as the receptionist for all the surgical services. And so everyone who came through the door came to her desk. And I was like, I don't want her to get COVID, because no one knew what it was about at that time. And I got really spun up thinking about all the worst case scenarios. And I thought, well, if she gets it, what are we going to do? And I'm like, well, it's okay if I get it, but I don't want her to get it. And what if, people in my family don't do well with it? And, on and on and on it went. And after about 3 or 4 hours, I was exhausted. So I decided I needed to go for a drive. And about 20 minutes into the drive, I called Lynn and I said, I can't get out of my head about this. And she said, Teresa, stop. You are as safe as you've ever been in this moment. And I knew that was true. I knew that I had been making up stories about scenarios that hadn't happened yet, but felt very real in my view of trying to control or prevent bad things from happening. And suddenly it was getting dark, just dusk, I guess. And I looked around and the world suddenly looked brighter. I could actually see people in their yards walking around, and I thought, nobody's having a problem here but me, you know? And it helped me. It helped me settle down. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting that we can create stress and we can recognize what we're doing with our mind about these events or things that are happening in our life, and we can settle right back down just in a span of a few minutes. That's our gift. That's our gift of these principles helping us navigate life. It's a deeper conversation for those of you who want to have that, just to sort of have your own insights into your own life about it. And it's incredibly healing, incredibly helpful.
Well, my goodness, Teresa, thank you. Thank you so much. I guess I would like to share just an insight that I had not too long ago, which is kind of a shortcut to all of this. I heard a voice saying to me, the most important part of self-care is dropping self-criticism. And then I thought, well, how do you do that? And I wondered. And finally I realized, well, it's just losing interest in criticizing myself. And then that's it.
I know, I think it's simplicity that causes us to really question the effectiveness of how principles work. There always seems like there's something we should be doing to be okay, to have that well-being feeling that we're looking for. And the key truly is recognizing how you're showing up, how life works, this nature that we are of using principles to navigate life with, knowing we're doing it or not knowing we're doing it. Either one is fine. Not knowing we're doing it, we'll notice that we're out of alignment with how principles work because we'll be suffering. We'll have negative thinking or catastrophic thinking or depressed thinking. But when we know how they work, we're going, oh, look what I'm doing. I'm paying attention. I'm focusing on the negative side of life. An amazing thing happens when you focus on the positive side of life, which is why we have so much information out there about positive psychology, positive thinking, affirmations. We're trying to tap into that. And what we're saying is the system isn't broken. We're getting exactly what we're using our thoughts to do. And like Lynn said, the shortcut is losing interest in the things that aren't working for you. When you lose interest in that, what are you going to think about? You know, for some people, it becomes such a way of life that we don't see anything else. And I see it a lot in the younger generation. Someone I know posted something that I wish I could get out of this negative thought loop. I can't seem to help myself. Or the anger loop, or the hurt loop. And, you know, I wanted to gently and kindly say, then focus on something positive, even if it's for a little bit. Because from the positive side of life is when things open up for you. The beauty is knowing that these principles, mind, consciousness, and thought, work however you want to use them. You get to have that experience. There's not a separation between your thought and your felt experience. Absolutely simultaneously happens. And they did an experiment, HeartMath Institute, maybe some of you have heard of it. They did an experiment hooking people up to the heart monitors and the EEGs, and they would show pictures of loving scenes, babies, happy things interspersed with negative and horrific things. And they proved that the heart actually senses that before the mind recognizes it. I thought that was really interesting. So this internal system that we have is so fine-tuned to the world we live in that sometimes we forget how powerful it is. And we have access to that as our foundation, as a principle, as a paradigm that only works one way, gives us a way to navigate life.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to know that we all have a natural innate health within each of us at every phase of life, regardless of our diagnosis. I'm just so thrilled to know that. It's such a solace. So the bottom line is we're not broken, and we're never lacking. There's nothing that's wrong when we can just recognize that simple thing, that life takes care of itself, and that we're here to enjoy life. I remember one day I moved halfway around the world, and when I got there, it was a terrible torrential rain. And I looked at the side of the mountain, and there were people there working in the mud. And I thought, as a farm girl, I knew what that was like. And I wrote a little 17-syllable poem, and it said, "Working in mountain mud reminds me this earth is for our joy." Talk about being grounded.
I just heard that in a completely different way today. We get to have joy when we want it. It's a choice to be able to say, I'm going to look for that today. And
Doesn't matter who, what, when, or where.
no, and it seems like sometimes that we're always waiting for the conditions to be just right, or a certain way shows up so that we can be okay to take the next step. And the realization is I could be in the mud and enjoy that and be okay. And really is no other place to be. There really is no other place to be. And I think it applies to every aspect of life, including your dreams. What do you want for your life? How do you want to live your life? If you look and say, I'm not getting what I want in my life, but I'm going in that direction and I'm going to wait to be happy when I get there, you're missing the best parts of your life. Because it's happening right here, right now. It's always here, right now. So make it a good thought. Decide what you want. How do you want to show up? And then get a coach to help you stay there. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, we have about 5 more minutes. I'd just love to entertain any insights that you might have had, questions or challenges. How does this sit with you?
Well, what Teresa said about it's a choice. I had a acquaintance, and her 18-year-old son committed suicide, and he left her a note saying, he was in therapy, and Mom, you did everything you could. Mom and Dad, you did everything you could. But the hole was too deep. And she's the one that told me that she makes a choice every day. She can't change what happened, but she can at least be happy. Even though she had horrific life experience, for me, that would be horrific. She made a choice every day to live her life with her family and not go down that choice of being, she is sad. Of course, she says, I'm sad, and it comes up and I get really, really sad. But then I just make a choice that I can be happy. I can choose to be happy or sad.
Thank you for saying that, because the one thing about those feelings is we don't have to avoid them, right? It's okay to feel a happy or sad feeling, an angry feeling. They're all here for us. But I love that, when we look for the good things in the current situation that we're in, we will find them. It doesn't mean we don't have thoughts about everything, it's the way life is.
And I just push that even if you have to fake it, in nursing school way back, we didn't practice that much on people. We had to go start our IVs on our patients, and it was fake it until you make it. I mean, they didn't know. They might have been shaken like a leaf, but
Yeah. We all remember the first ones. That's right.
the first NG, the first anything you do in a procedure way with a human being, not a mannequin. If you had mannequins, because I went to school long ago that we didn't have mannequins for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
So,
I remember.
yeah. So.
But the good thing about it is once you start recognizing that the system only works one way, you get better and better at it. Like you start seeing, oh, I didn't realize thought was included in that. I didn't realize my thought, and you start to see this connection. And I wish I could describe it better, but it's a feeling. It's a knowing.
Well, I worked with a nurse that every time she came into work, there was something else going on. Her teenage daughter got pregnant, then her second teenage daughter got pregnant, then her third teenage pregnant, then she got divorced. And she kept saying, it can't get any worse. I said, when are you going to stop saying that? Because for you, it always is getting worse. Why don't you just say it is? This is it. How can you change that? Because every single time she'd come in, be like, well, it can't get any worse. And then the next time it would get seemingly worse. Like, oh my, let's change that thought process.
But do you see what happened? She says it can't get any worse, and then it did, because the universe responds to what you say.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does. There's no separation.
Yeah.
And I'm still working on that one.
Yeah. Well, a work in process. I mean,
well, the beauty is we get to do this from birth to death, so we have plenty of time.
Well, speaking of time, I think our time is near at hand. So I'm going to turn off the recording, but we're going to stay here. And if people have individual questions, we're open to listening. How did I turn it off?